I'd like for you to meet Melissa Lyons. She is actually the newest member of ITES SEDS, the PEIMS team, and she started in March of this year as a systems analyst. She has worked for an SIS vendor where her primary focus was on Texas state reporting. So Melissa is going to bring us PEIMS, reporting career and technical education data. Let's welcome Melissa.
Like Diane had already said, my name is Melissa Lemons. I have been working for TEA for just a few months, but know that my background is in Texas state reporting. I worked for a vendor for a long time, so I'm pretty familiar with this. As far as career and technical education, this is not my expertise. This is Bryce's, but Bryce had a family emergency today, so he couldn't be with us. So I'm stepping up in his stead, but if you have any questions I cannot answer, I'm happy to take them back, and I will have Bryce, we'll work with it, and we'll figure it out. So pardon any clerical errors you might see in this presentation, as I already found a few, but Bryce did his best in a pinch, so. And I've never used one of these, so this is also new. All right, so we're gonna go ahead on. All right. So today what we were going to be discussing is just sort of reporting for career and technical education. Know that this presentation covers both fall and summer. Truthfully, fall's happened. At this point, we're really concerned about the summer submission. Hopefully it goes well for each of you. So we're just going to sort of emphasize the summer, but I will quickly glaze over that, the fall. So if you have any questions, let me know. And also Diane Salazar is here as well, so she can also help field questions. All right, so for the PEIMS data standards, I'm certain that you'll both know that there are currently two PEIMS systems in production. We have Legacy and then we have TSDS PEIMS, and we all know what is phasing out next year. And yes, I'm as sad as the next person, don't worry, I love my Legacy. So there they are. I didn't even have to pull the next slide. So for this year, we have two different ones. So depending on what your district is on, work accordingly. So in here, starting next year, I've already mentioned it, but we will be at TSDS PEIMS. That's every district. So it's going to be an interesting school year. But for now, you can still hold on to Legacy. The career and technical education is collected through the PEIMS system 2 times per year. I bet y'all can guess which 2 times that is. Let's say it's not submission 2. So we're going to have our submission 1, which obviously first time is in the fall snapshot, last Friday in October, and it sort of tells you here the second time is in the summer collection, and this is when we start looking at the attendance, and of course record the amount of students in each school for CTE courses. Next one, I'm certain you'll know, is what CTE data is collected by the Texas Education Agency. And once again, we're going to go through some of the fall stuff a little quickly, but the Career and Technical Ed Indicator Code, this indicates whether or not a student is enrolled in a state-approved CTE course. I'm not going to read that whole thing. I think y'all can probably read that. But if you have any question on it, let me know. For it, you're either going to be putting the student as a 0 or a 1. So 0 meaning they're not enrolled, and a 1 meaning they are. So, and then it does tell you what is considered enrolled in a CTE course. Obviously, we don't have kindergartners enrolled in a CTE course. We have our 6th through 12th graders who can potentially take a CTE course based on the CO22 table, those courses that are identified as CTE. All right, and then here we go. We have the reporting the PEIMS if there are 2. So this is just explaining what a coherent sequence is. And I'm certain y'all each know what that is, but here it is if you need it actually identified. Otherwise, you could go out and look out in TEDS, and I say TEDS, but you can also look in Legacy, and you can read the same information. This one's going to be, I'm going to gloss over this. I'm certain y'all are all aware that Tech-Prep this is the last year for it. You will not be reporting this in the following years. This should really be phased out. So any student who is in it should be hopefully done. If not, they won't be reported as Tech-Prep for the next year. So I won't go through this whole thing, but anything in blue actually is talking about Tech-Prep. So This just sort of goes through more about the tech prep. While the tech prep program is no longer funded, the district may have some students. So if you do, don't worry, you can still report them for the 15-16 school year. And then just a little bit more. Yes, I realize we have to restate that for the 2016-17, 3 is not in existence. So if you go out to code tables, you don't have an option for 3. All right, so if we're reporting for the CTE PEIMS data, a CTE Tech-Prep program, what is that? So this sort of explains, combines a minimum of 2 years, secondary, so on and so forth. So as said, I'm just going to go through it briefly because we're not really doing them anymore. Bryce just had these already in there. And no, I didn't have a chance to go out and delete them. All right, so the other part with the CTE PEIMS data is you also have to report the displaced homemaker, whether or not yes or no to that. And this just explains what a displaced homemaker is. This is for the fall collection only. So I guess in the 16-17 you could actually take this data and you could still use it for next year. And more about the displaced homemaker. And we're going to continue on through fall. You have the single parent pregnancy teen code, and this is also a fall collection. And there's going to be another transportation. So fall collection. And we are going, and of course, the service ID for fall. And then this is also here, summer collection for course completion. So yes, we do collect that service ID in the summer collection. Okay, and this continuing on, this reflects the CTU courses that a CTU student is taking on Snapshot. So that last Friday, and this is fall. Maybe, I'm not hitting it, there we go. And then for the CTU service ID, this is when it's reported for the CO22 table and reflects the TEEPs. So for the summer, obviously we're looking for those courses that like equine science. That would be an example of a CTE course. So we're looking at that and making sure that the TEEPs for equine science are actually being addressed. All right, now another important part here is the ATC-INDICATOR-CODE. This is summer collection, so it is something you will need to make sure is being reviewed. So it just explains what the ATC-INDICATOR-CODE is, just indicates a high school course for which a college credit may be awarded. And your student may not have this, so keep that in mind too. But just note that it is reported in summer. Yeah, I don't think I had any super duper notes on that. So once again, it's still part of course completion. And there are some validations, which is why we bring this up, and we'll get into the validations. So the ATC indicator really is just a yes or no. So I believe it comes from, I'm not mistaken, the CO88 table, but really it's just yes they are or no, or yes it is or no it isn't. The next one here, the career and technical education attendance data. This is submission 3. If I hear the word attendance, I automatically know submission 3. So here, you just want to make sure they're still receiving additional weighted funding for eligible CTE students that are reported. No single course can earn more than 3 contact hours. This information you probably already know, but if you do have questions, you can always refer to the Student's Attendance Accounting Handbook for any rules related to it. So that's handled by the School of Finance. Okay, so here's where we're actually getting to our, the more nitty-gritty. So how is this data reported through PEIMS? All right, so for submission 1, so your fall submission, the student is reported with their CTE indicator code as of the last Friday of October. That was pretty obvious. Yes, they are a CTE student. No, they're not. Pretty basic. And then, of course, the rest of the information that's also reported. We have your displaced homemaker, single parent, and transportation. And then, of course, the service IDs. For fall, you also have a CTE student still going into this last Friday. We really want you to know that. For summer, for submission 3, this is whenever you actually look for the participation as of the last day of enrollment. I don't know if you've ever went out and looked at the decision charts. They're really nice. Yes, they are in Legacy, but you can also find them in Appendix P. So if you need to see what the decision chart is, whether or not the student is considered a CTE student for summer or for fall, you can go out and look at that decision chart. And basically it just says, is the student on this day, yes or no, and you just go down. It's a nice little workflow there. They're currently, if you go out to Legacy, you can go look at the 101 scroll all the way down, you can see it. Or if you go out to Appendix P, just a heads up on Appendix P, we're going to be getting rid of that in 16-17 school year. We're merging Appendix P with Section 2. So if you're using Appendix P to look at anything for that, just note that next year, if my job, if I do it okay and everything works out, it'll be merged. So you'll be able to just go to 2, look it up. So the decision charts are not leaving or anything. They're just moving to where it's more conveniently located. But just mention that because whenever I see this, it's always nice to know a last day of enrollment. What do we mean? So for submission 3, if a student completed a CTE course during the school year, then the student must be reported as CTE regardless of their end of year program participation. What that means is if a student takes a semester 1 course and they're identified as CTE, then in semester 2, yes, they are a CTE student. They took a course and they got course completion for the course. So, it's just stating that. And then, of course, here's the actual note to look at that. But I'm certain y'all probably looked at the decision chart. If not, I'll be honest, when I worked at the vendor, it was, we looked at it all the time. And not typically because I needed it, but because somebody didn't understand it. So, and when you're trying to report, it can get a little confusing. Because if you have a kid in it for one day, maybe in August or September, well, do you report them or not? So, all right, reporting CTE PEIMS. So going forward, a CTE student is reported with the ATC-INDICATOR-CODE on summer course completion data. This is required for all CTE courses completed. As I said, you may be taking a CTE course, and yes, maybe the ATC indicator is no, but you still report it. There are validations that will check for this. So, next part, really getting into the QA part. So, you're wanting to verify your data. So we're going to look at the validations, and we're going to look at the reports you can use. Now, you may not have access to these reports, but your PEIMS coordinator will. And if you happen to be the CTE person and PEIMS coordinator, I feel bad for you because that's a lot of work. But that's actually good too because you can access them yourself. So going in here, I'm going to actually skip the fall validations for right now, unless there's a question on them, just because we're past the fall. But the validations are in here, and they have not changed for the 16-17, not even in our change logs that I know of anything for CTE, so knock on wood on that. But as of right now, we don't have any changes that have not already been addressed in the validations for CTE courses. So you have several validations for fall in here. Just things that it's going to look for. For instance, the student reported a career tech education program must be in grades 6 through 12. So if you're trying to report a kindergartner, yes, you're going to get, you're going to get a fatal. That seems like, sort of clear cut. But these are things to check. So when you're a PEIMS coordinator, or if you're the one, as I said, if you're tasked with that, and you get these, obviously go look at the grade level. That seems obvious, but you never know. Whenever you have thousands of fatals, this can be a lot more tasking. For submission 1 and 3, this is one of the ones that actually pertains to both. There should be at least one career tech as student that is a participant in a coherent sequence of course or a tech prep program. Notice it says there should. You're going to get a warning on this, but it is unlikely you're going to have a CTE program and have no kids who are taking a coherent sequence. So we give you a warning just saying, hey, check that out, make sure. But maybe you're first year and y'all haven't had the chance to build your career, CTE program. I don't know. So fall, I'm going to skip the fall ones. This one. And then tech prep, keep in mind next year the blue, it won't actually be in part of that, because there's not going to be any tech prep. So submissions 1 and 3 again. A student in grades 6, 7, or 8 must not be reported as participating in a coherent sequence of courses. So these are things to check to make sure you don't have kids who are doing so. And so for this one's just a summary and makes sense for it. So career tech ed student in grades 9 through 12 is a participant in a coherent sequence of courses, should be reported with a career tech education attendance. I'm not certain I know of a situation where they wouldn't be, but I'm certain there are. Notice it's just a should. So if there's not attendance, it's something to go look at. So just a note there. Fall once again, so I'm not going to focus on that one. Summer though, if a student in grades 9 through 12 is enrolled in a career tech ed course, then at 415, Course completion record must be reported for career and tech ed course for that student. I see 415, I automatically think legacy, so we could probably say the wording will probably change in that next year, and it may have already. But with the 415, just note that, as I said, these are things that are going to be checked. Most likely your PEIMS coordinator is going to have you check these. She's probably not, or he is not going to, they're just going to say, here you go, here's your list of fatals or special warnings, go check them. As I said, if you're tasked with both parts, you'll probably already know the answers to these questions. So this is just part of the QA to make sure that submission 3 works well. So another validation for you. If a student in grades 9 through 12 is a participant in a coherent sequence of courses, then a 415 completion record should be reported for a career tech ed course for that student. This makes sense again. If you have them in a coherent sequence, then there should be some kind of course that they are taking for that. But notice it does say should. And then these go into the fall, and since we're in summer, each LEA's data submission generally should report CTE attendance for each student and membership who was enrolled in a secondary CTE class. So if you have CTE courses, then you should have some kind of CTE attendance connected to those. If you don't, that's going to be something that they will ask for you to check. And then summer again. If the service ID is grade 9 through 12, CTE high school course eligible for high school credit, and the course was completed, the CTE must be indicated as or the student must be indicated as a CTE student. I think that needed to be reworded. So in here, I've already said it before, but if they did complete it, they must be a CTE student at the end of the year. Once again, I went back to that decision chart. So if they took a course that's a CTE course, then they will be identified as a CTE student. All right, and then summer again, the ATC indicator, this is where I said there was a validation. If the ATC indicator code indicates a course for which college credit may be awarded under local articulation agreement for the statewide ATC program, the course must not be reported as dual credit course. So you're going to have ATC indicator validations that will pop up. Hopefully not too often. If the service ID is reported as dual credit, then ATC must not be reported as, or must be reported as not ATC. Makes sense. You have a lot of these for summer. If a student's course code is 6 to 8 or 7 to 8, CTE middle school course not eligible for high school credit, and the course was completed, then the CTE indicator code must indicate the student was enrolled in a CTE course. So I'm not certain if y'all are like me, but I tend to go out and search the validations. So if TSDS, section 4, or in Legacy, I go and look at all my validations. So you probably have a list of these. It's always smart to check our change log too, just if you're looking for anything that may have changed that you don't have on your list. But I know most of these because I can literally just search, career and technical, and find these validations. So you don't have to wait for your PEIMS person to come back with other fatals if you think you may have some of these already cropping up. It could be it could be advantageous to go ahead and make a list of these. They're all listed in here, but going forward, things change, right? So just my own little tidbit. All right, so the data quality validations, here's another summer one. If a student is reported with CTE flex attendance, the total flexible attendance and total eligible minutes present must not be less than 45 minutes. So if you're doing flex attendance for CTE, that's going to be a validation you will have to concern yourself with. Just make sure, and if you have any type of data reporting in your SIS system, you could potentially do a lot of this, in advance. So I'm not sure what systems each of you might be on, or a lot of y'all are ESC, so I don't know what your districts might be using, but if they have some kind of data mining or some kind of data reporting, they could start looking at this early. All right, so we're going to get into some of the reporting. So in here, these are our reports. So this is going to be the EditPlus. These are going to be our data quality validation reports. Just reports you can use. Now, some of them are for fall and some are for summer. But don't dismiss them. I mean, you may not be using it for right now, but you don't know what you're going to do in like 5 months, So whenever we're closer to October, you might want to ask your PEIMS coordinator, or if you are the PEIMS coordinator, you might want to have them go ahead and start running some of these. So the first one here, I put in here, well, Bryce took the liberty of putting in here the report for the edit class and the TSDS report. So you know those are the equivalents between the two. It's sort of if you're old school, I tend to be more old school. I'll know one part of the reports. TSDS is still very new. So in here, whenever you run this one, this is really a student enrollments by program. So if you're looking for numbers, this is really just going to be a number-driven report, so you can look at the numbers of that. So if, for instance, for career and tech, you only have 10 students, but you're very certain you have 43. I don't know. That would be really, really big. Okay, say it's like 13, and you think you should have about 15. Maybe a few kids have just enrolled or something. Reports like this can really help you. Like if I know that I'm lacking kids, then I know to go look for it. So I've always found reports that show me numbers, especially, I know y'all know y'all's numbers. Like if you're a CTE person, I know you know how many kids you have. So reports like this, I just need a number, or at least sometimes. And then I can go and run my data mining reports and see which kids didn't work. So this is a good report for just that. So then we get into a fall report. So this one here, this report will show the reader the ethnicity and gender distributions for CTE courses. So if you're needing something that just actually shows you more of a demographic review, this is a good report for that. Maybe you want to look and see, like, if you're doing like some kind of trend analysis for next year, trying to project, this could be a really interesting report. Another fall report, but still just as useful. This one will actually show you the unique CTE courses taught on a particular campus. So if you need a list of the report, or like the actual courses being taught that have a CTE service ID associated, you could use this report. This can also be useful if for some reason y'all are reporting a course you didn't realize y'all even had. Maybe you don't offer equine science and someone put in the wrong number. Maybe they meant animal science. It happens. Maybe they meant, I don't know, underwater, deep sea diving. I don't know. So definitely look into that one. So another report, and this is another fall one, but the students by career and technical indicator code and grade. This report gives the reader the distribution of CTE indicator code by grade level. There should be mostly CTE 1 on the lower grade levels and increasing in the 2s. This actually makes sense. On the upper grade levels, 3 will definitely be declining because of tech prep. So in this one, this is actually going to be showing you the students by grade level. And their code. So that's actually very useful once again if you're trying to look, maybe you're even looking at trends in this instance. Maybe you want to look at your 6th graders. How many 6th graders are actually enrolling in CTE? Maybe you're the high school, maybe a high school counselor is asking. Well, if you do, or maybe you're a counselor and you're projecting out the courses y'all want to have in 3 years. Well, if you have a lot of kids who are taking equine science, well, that's not a good, that was a high school one, but okay, they're taking maybe a prep course for that. You might want to bring that into your high school. So this can be an interesting report. Once again, this could even be something a principal or a superintendent might even use. But mostly, these really are geared toward your CTE people. If especially if you're the main contact for the campus on any CTE that comes in, and you're trying to figure out how to use funding, this is an interesting way of using that. This could actually, you could even maybe project out maybe writing a grant or something like that if you're trying to get numbers on that. I love reports, they're fun. So another fall one, this report lists, career and tech roster by career tech indicator. This report lists all the names of CTE students as well as the level of CTE participation. This is probably going to be more focused toward campus, because I can't imagine somebody at the district's going to know every kid's name or know if whether or not they should be reported. But at a campus, this can be very useful to know all the kids that are currently in participation for CTE. You need to verify your data. So you had that 15 and it should have been 13 or vice versa. Well, this is a great way if I go by my campus and go, oh, they withdrew like 3 years ago. Why are we even reporting them? It happens, believe me. I've heard some pretty funny stories on that, so it happens. All right, submission 3 for summer. Survey of the 7th and 8th grade CTE students generating more than one career tech ed quality education contact hour per day. That one's a mouthful. So this would definitely be quality assurance. One CT contact hour is generally equal to 45 to 55 minutes. So a student in grades 7 and 8 are rarely in more than one CTE course. Notice we had that, remember that validation we had back there regarding the 45 minutes and regarding the 7th and 8th graders. this would be one for quality assurance, just to make sure that you don't have kids. I mean, if you do have kids that are, you probably want to check them. It's unlikely. That's why it's just a warning. But it is unlikely that you're going to have that situation, so it's good to go ahead and verify. And once again, I mean, if you don't have access to these reports, your PEIMS coordinator should most definitely have access to them. So we'll be able to help you get access to these reports. We'll print them out for you. All right, students completing courses with advanced technical credit. So great report if you want to see students that are basically identified as with an ATC indicator. Now you probably, on an SIS, if your vendor probably has a similar report that can run and they can see everybody who's identified with an ATC. But if you want to see what's been reported, that is going to be a different thing. So this can be a useful report if you want to know who has been identified. Maybe y'all don't actually offer anything, but yet you have kids that have been identified. This would be a good way to fill that information. All right, the superintendent's report for career and technical education eligible days. This report allows the reader to determine the number of CTE attendance days and CTE FTEs. So this is a pretty important report. So this one's really going to look at attendance. Superintendents, that's what they're it's all about the funding at the end of the day for that, so that they can continue programs like this. So this will be a nice report if you're wanting to look at the CTE FTE information. Once again, PEIMS coordinator can definitely pull this report. So flex attendance, so going back to flex attendance we sort of talked about earlier, we have the superintendent's report of career tech ed eligible days. This report allows the reader to determine the number of CTE flexible attendance days and CTE FTEs, so you have the optional flexible school day. So once again, you might have something on your SIS vendor program that allows you to pull this as well, but this can be very useful. Once again, attendance equates out to funding, so if you're needing to know regarding the flexible attendance days that are being reported, this is a great option. Oh, there you go. So comparison of current and prior year attendance. This report allows the reader to compare the increase or decrease in attendance. Really, so CTE participation with attendance. So I've always liked a comparison report. I find them to be very useful to see where we were last year versus where we are this year. So say last year you had a certain amount of attendance and participation, and maybe it drops drastically, or it increases drastically. That's really going to make you, you're going to want to analyze that because either it's good or bad. So it's rare that you're going to have a situation where it drops drastically. If you're pretty steady each year, it's unlikely you're going to see it just completely plummet. So it'll definitely help you determine whether or not we need to assess. So this is really quality assurance, just making sure, if you wanted to look, well, where were we, summer last year? Because that doesn't seem right. You could do a comparison and see where you were at one point versus another. So it's definitely a useful report to see, as I said, once again, trends as well. All right, well, that was it. So as far as the reports, I think that's where you're going to want to focus around all the reports. Most of the data in this you probably know, but the reports, I don't know what your relationship with each of your PEIMS coordinators is. But I would definitely have a really good relationship. These reports are really great. I know Bryce and I sat down and looked at a huge amount of them, and I'll be honest, they really do help you determine what you're going to want to do. And if you're really into statistics, I quite love statistics and trends. They're just really fun to look at. But keep in mind, you're wanting your funding. And at the end of the day, these reports will help you clean up your data. And really that's what we want, is data accuracy. So I hope that this will help. If y'all have any questions on this, guys, my email's at the back here. Don't hesitate to send me an email. Just let me know the district or the ESC you're at, and I'm happy to contact you, and we can discuss anything you may have. Besides that, I really do hope you'll have a good day and enjoy the really, really, really hot weather we're having. Oh, and then I just did something. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's all good. Thank you.
No problem.
Just briefly, a couple of PEIMS thoughts as we close out this topic.
Every district handles the roles of dealing with the specifics of this data a little bit differently. Some districts have the CTE administrator very directly involved with all of the data analysis, and other districts, depending on the size of the district, have a little different interplay with it. But regardless of how your district handles it, how many of you in the room are actively and directly involved with the kind of reporting that was just discussed? Raise your hand. Okay. Those of you who didn't raise your hand, whether or not your role plays out exactly the way this presentation was presented or not, it's very valuable for you to know who is covering that base within your district and what the mechanism is. The very first year I began in my role, I was going through some checks. I'd been trained by we had a great PEIMS director. I'd been trained. I was just double checking some of our data and number of kids that were identified as CTE and contact hours. And I was absolutely convinced at the end of the second day of my checking contact hours that I had misunderstood something in my training, because all of my contact hours for every kid I checked were coming up double what they should have been. That was really scary for me, because we didn't want to get paid for what we weren't, generating, because that's a big hairy mess. So I took it to the director of PEIMS, and she looked into it and talked to our software vendor. They had a software glitch that hadn't been identified yet. And whew, it was February. We didn't have to worry about it because they had plenty of time to resolve it before June submission. But it's nice to just have a clue on how things are being generated and how things work. And we did have actually a very competent staff member who was diligently inputting some information one year according to the instructions she'd been given. And she's a good worker, so she just plowed through 300 kids that day. Unbeknownst to the PEIMS director, there had been a software update generated the night before, and it changed something in the directions that the staff member was inputting. And so inadvertently, instead of making the change she thought she was making, she made 300 kids identified as American Indian overnight. Well, we certainly identified that very quickly when we were looking at reports, and it was an easily resolvable issue. But those are just a couple examples of where the rubber meets the road, where things that can happen on a local district level. So it never hurts to have others minding the store, just checking in on, is this good data? Is this reflecting what we want to say? Are these the number of kids we're serving? Is this, what it needs to be? And then I would say, I've heard so many administrators mention, sometimes they'll go in and check, their data's all good, the system's all set up, great, pristine, love it. 3 months later, they go back in, and inadvertently, somebody's hit a keystroke and identified, kids in a program you don't offer. So double checking and triple checking is a reasonable thing. And there are ways to safeguard that and to kind of determine that. And everybody's software delivery system has a few little individual aspects to it as well. And your software vendors will work with you on making sure your data is clean and reflects what you want it to say and all that. But that doesn't happen automatically. It does take folks minding the store. David commented how grateful he is for their PEIMS person in Deer Park. They do a great job. And how do you handle it, Greg, with your folks?
I actually sit down and review all of our data before we submit, and I'll give you a good example. Our ADA was up quite a bit, and my finance department had me prove to them 3 times before they would allow PEIMS to submit that those numbers were accurate. The way we were able to do that is we actually took our PEIMS report, looked at where we had the biggest growth. This was contact hours, because we had some contact hour growth in our B2s, B3s. So I pulled random 4-year plans, compared them to the numbers, and verified 3 separate times.
Right.
The other thing you were talking about, your over-reporting of contact hours. When I joined Conroe in 2010, one of the first things I got to do was approve a letter from my superintendent whereby our district was repaying TEA because we have campus that switched from a traditional schedule to a block schedule, yet they continued to report contact hours as though those students were meeting every day. So they doubled the contact hours on that campus. And so those are some of the things that you can catch before you submit to the agency if you take the time to do it.
And anytime there's turnover in any capacity within the district, there is a potential breeding ground for misunderstanding. So as a new person to CTE, it's a great time for you to come in and just get a fresh look with fresh eyes on how this is done, and be sure that you're comfortable with it being the best way you can go. You know, sometimes your needs change as the size of your campuses change, as the rules change. So just give it some thought with that. But that does tend to make your life a little bit easier. The other thing we did, I loved comparative data from one year to another. See our kids were, how many kids we're serving, how did it compare to last year to 2 years ago, what kids are coming in our courses that are prerequisite to our lab class, to our culinary classes or our clinical classes, or our courses that are capstone experiences, because that's going to affect how we plan our master schedule and our teachers, and we want to be sure we have instructional room for all the kids that are coming forward. So getting a good handle on the trends and the interests of your curriculum is nice. It gives you the summer to kind of work it and do some long-range planning with all that too. So it's another thought. What questions do you folks have, having spent a year out in the real world? Coming back, we've got just a little bit of time that we can brainstorm a little bit or troubleshoot. Yes.
So in the presentation, we just saw a lot of different reports that were available.
Yes.
Is there a place where we can go and see a comprehensive list of all the reports that could be pertinent to us, and where's that located?
If I were in your shoes, I would go back to my district and make an hour-long appointment with your PEIMS director and sit down and talk about what's available through CTE, both through your vendor for software collection, but also through the PEIMS official reporting system. And then I made, because everything is in code, right? So it's all XYZ 300 to 14, and I looked at it 3 times a year, so that whole name didn't just immediately lock into my mind. So I had a whole little PEIMS, document that I kept, and then I made up my own names for the reports. Oh, that's my summer report, it's real important. Big money, little money, whatever made sense to you, but I would sit down and decipher it a little bit so you know what reports you want to ask for. But whenever I talked to my PEIMS director, I used her PEIMS language. But I had to keep a cheat sheet to remember it.
Also, you can get a copy of the PEIMS data standards. It's a big document.
It's a big document, yeah.
However, it's a great resource. And the other thing,
right.
Remember in the Student Attendance Accounting Handbook,
right.
Section 5,
right.
You've got some great definitions there of some of the...
They do list, yes. Section 5 lists some of them as well. But if you want to sit down and I had stuff sent to me monthly or every other month just so I could keep up with some ideas on how things were developing.
Is the PEIMS data standards, is that like the Bible for the PEIMS people, that they have, these are CTE codes, these are reports for CTE people, these are reports for bilingual,
they have a multi-layered reporting system where all of the programs get funded through, the reporting observances there, and your PEIMS director folks do their training at a multitude of places, so their service centers and what all. And if our PEIMS director went to a training that involved CTE, she would give me a call when she got back, and we would just touch base, see if I'd heard of it too, and just so we both were having a working understanding of what we were doing. It's much easier than to wait till right before June submission or fall snapshot and try to figure it out then. That's not fun. Any other questions? Yeah.
In our district, we've done kind of a complete revamp of the coherent sequences and added a bunch of new plans. Consequently, a huge number of students, their code changed
Absolutely.
in the middle of the year,
right.
in between October and now. So it's been my understanding that you've change it now for the summer submission as to what they ended the year. Right?
I'm going to defer answering that question. David had an experience a few years ago with some code changing mid-year that was, and it depends on the specific attention there. Oh, Melissa's still here. We'll have her weigh in.
I would tell you don't change anything until you're sure that change needs to be made, because it can really get you into trouble. Our motto in Deer Park is don't change anything.
Yeah, I have to echo that. And when I go back to my first month on the job as a CTE director, when I made the third layer of interview with the superintendent, I told him my goal was to never write another SIP at an FDA. And my first month on the job, I found out we were stage 3 in data validation. Here's the concern. If you change those, if there's a state of incongruence between what you report on the fall snapshot and what is coded on your state test documents, that can be a trigger for a stage of intervention by the agency. I would echo what David says, because what I did was the next year I called in every counselor in the district, 50 of them, and we had a PEIMS coding party. They brought every
and a training session for how to code
with them, and I called in every resource, including Region 6, and at the time, the Tech-Prep people, and I put my eyes on every 4-year plan, and I personally approved it, and they had to submit a form to me requesting a code change, and I had to approve it before we would submit that. So David's philosophy is my philosophy, and that is code it, leave it alone. And unless you have a strong justification, then there shouldn't be many of those.
Travis?
Yeah, when I was a building principal, I had a counselor, and I couldn't understand how they were coding kids because it didn't make sense when I was pulling the codes, the code 0, 1s, and 2s specifically. And that was a big problem. So what I ended up doing was on that fall coding chart, I made them put a kid's name at the top of every chart, because you need 3 things to do it properly. You need their current schedule, you need the transcript, and you need the graduation plan.
Right.
Otherwise, you can't.
Their future plan. Right, absolutely.
You can't
And
legally code them.
I think it's important, if you folks in the room have not had the opportunity to delve deeply into how coding is occurring in your district, put that on your list to do. You'll want to determine where things are at, and then look at your training. But once you start with coding at the beginning of the year, you want to keep that consistent in most cases. And you can visit with Melissa too if you'd like to. She's right in the back of the room at the door. David.
Greg made a really important statement. He approved every change.
I always did too.
He approves every change.
Right.
Nobody changes anything unless
Right.
we
We had a point, right. And I have to say I had wonderful counseling staff and administrative staff that I worked with as well. And they would do a lot of the pre-work, but I looked over every single situation. The coding rules are complicated. I felt more comfortable just eyeballing every single one and knowing that our data was clean. So you choose your own approach with it, but give it some thought on the best way to approach that for the kids. Okay, yes.
So if me, has already gone in and found numerous mistakes,
Fall is a great time to
and I already asked PEIMS to make changes like a month ago, repercussions?
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
Okay. I was in Fort Worth, and around 2007, 2008, whoever had done the coding, we were coding classes and not kids. So we had one problem there. We had another problem that we weren't coding according to the PEIMS chart. So we changed from fall, and we went on the answer documents and changed every year. We had our first audit of fall.
And that's what David experienced as well. Mid-year changes are an issue. Yeah.
Well, one question, because I've been advised a certain way on this, is that none of the changes were made until after the spring testing was done. Testing is over, and the advice was for the summer submission, you fix it to what it should be at the end of the year.
And that advice came from?
Other CTE directors.
I'm not sure that will serve you in the best way. For sure, you want to have a clear and clean identification process going forward. But in general, mid-year is not optimal. And folks, these are real-time issues that come up when there's turnover with folks. And it's more important to work the problem forward, to have good solutions and clean data in the future. If you inadvertently run into an issue, you have an understanding of what led to it and where you are and why where you're moving forward is going to be positive for your kids in your district. I'd just be sure that all your folks are clear on what your situation is and where you're going. And you feel good about where you're headed. And you get everybody on board so that they're all moving the same direction with you. So those are inevitable issues that come up with turnover. And so our job as new administrators is to work the problem positively. So it'd be lovely if we all walked into a perfect situation. But invariably, there are areas where we can grow and the district can grow. So. Other questions? How are we doing on time? Is it break time? 5 minutes?
You know, the question was asked, and since Melissa's still here, maybe she can answer the best place to go to find the team's information.
Oh, for reporting. The name, do you have a list online of all the different reports related to CTE, or is that best obtained through a local PEIMS director? Okay, I know your PEIMS director can provide that for you. So.
There is actually a list, and it has even a crosswalk from PEIMS Edit Plus numbers
Good.
to your new TSDS.
Good.
And it's on the PEIMS website.
PEIMS website. Okay, great. Excellent. Any last minute questions as we wrap? If you, during break, if there's something that you're managing on a local level that you'd rather not bring before the whole group, you're welcome to touch base with Greg or David or I or any of the ESC people and our TEA staff that are present. So thanks all.
Yay.